Hey there, I thought I would do something a little bit different today. And starts the other day when I was designing an upcoming project. This is another example of one that goes back a long time. And I don't know exactly why I keep putting out these projects. Part of it is, okay, I talked before about the magnitude of some projects. This one is not really big, but I don't know. Another thing is, okay, when you're doing this, there's a lot of work involved. This is what a lot of people don't realize, how much work is involved in taking it from a project that you think about, like just a raw idea that pops in your head, and going right through the process to turn it into a finished project with a video and a build article and all that stuff. And if you have plans for it, well, that makes it even more so. But this one, like I say, I initially thought of this years ago. I actually bought the commercial version of this and it didn't work well. So I don't even know what I did with it. But I know I stopped using it at some point, and it was made out of aluminum mostly. So maybe I recycled it when I recycled a bunch of scrap aluminum that I had from doing the doors and hardware thing. I sketched a doodle of this, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And at the time I was kind of stuck on the locking mechanism. And before I get in much further into it, I'll tell you what it is. It's a straight edge guide. It's the kind that you would lock on a piece of plywood, or even like a door. That's what I used to use it for, to cut doors. Or just a panel, a short panel that you want to cross cut nice and straight. And you don't want to go through a bunch of monkeying around. So I pulled out the design again and I started working on it. Not in here though, I did all the work out there. And what I did was I installed a screen capture program so that I could capture what I was doing while I was working on it. Unfortunately, I was part of the way in before it occurred to me that I maybe could do this. So it's like this video starts off with me already in progress, I guess, with part of it done anyway. Okay, with that, we're gonna jump in and I'm just gonna play it here and comment as I go along. The big sticking point was how it was gonna lock on the front, and I wanted to have a cam like the commercial version has, but I really couldn't come up with a good way of doing that, or at least I didn't think so at the time. But then when I sat down to draw this the other day, I said, why don't you just make a small cam? Like it's very much like is on my table saw fence, just miniaturized, because it really doesn't have to have a huge amount of holding power. So what I'm building right now is the rub plate from aluminum, I guess, or steel, and I'm just putting the screw location in there before I put it back in. That goes in, the cam swings down and it locks against that, or rubs against that plate, and it pushes that block that I'm working on right now. So I want to make that block a little bit shorter than the sides, because, okay, if it sticks up past the edge of the panel, the saw will catch on it. So I'll make that a little bit narrower. Again, not a big deal. And then I was thinking, how could I possibly, anchor that block so that it can move forwards but still be attached to the thing there? And it occurs to me that I could use the rub plate, which I'm screwing up here. First of all, I updated the graphics driver on my computer, which is causing that weird shit to be happening there. And I changed it back in the next clip so it'll look different. But the idea is that the rub plate will also screw to that block that pushes against the edge of the panel. So that solves that. Okay, what I'm doing here now is I think I'm making the pin. Yeah, I'm making the pin. Am I making the pin? No, I was making the hole in the block for the pin. And here, what I do is every time I have a hole, a round hole like that, I always mark the center. and then I duplicated the component and put it over there. So those two are exactly the same. And this is the progress up to this point. Okay, next part I think is to work on the bar itself. And I really should have reviewed this footage before. Yeah, here I'm measuring the length because it has to be at least 48. And rethinking this again, it has to be at least 49 because you buy sheets of melamine or some sheets of MDF are 49 inches wide. So you want it to at least cover that. So what I did was I extended it out a little bit and I made the clamping block for the end. And I didn't get fancy with this. I'll probably do something else with this when I actually build it. It's good for me to mention here that all of this footage that you're watching is sped up 2 times. And I may actually edit out some parts where I screwed up, like in the last one where I made a mess of the rub plate. And yeah, here I'm just laying out a slot down the middle for the bolt to ride through. And first I was going to make it a 1/2 inch, and then I decided I would make it a 1/4 inch. And now I'm thinking that if that slot goes all the way down the full length, it's going to compromise the strength of the thing. So I'm trying to lay out what I think will be the minimum panel width, which would be like less than 12 probably. So I came out there 12 inches. And now I'm going to split the difference and make a mark in the middle for a join between the 2 sides. Like the slot will come up to that point, stop, and then it would start again. But I later changed my mind on this because, okay, first of all, the gap in between the slots is too big. I mean, there'll be a size panel that I can't clamp with this thing because of that big space between the slots right there. I came up with a better solution anyway, and you'll see it when it comes up, but I'll just go through this anyway. What I did here was I screwed up and I didn't open the component to edit it directly, so I had to redo all this, and you'll see me undoing it all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip ahead to the point where all of this is done. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I've got the slots done, and I'm trying to determine, okay, there needs to be another, like a recess for the bolt. Originally I was going to use a carriage bolt, and then I got to thinking that I have these toilet flange bolts that are a rectangular head on them and flat, so that would work best with this. And I think I made another straight edge guide, one for the table saw, that used one of those bolts. So this is where I'm at, and you can see I actually closed down the space between the things when I redid it, and I think I'm going in there again to edit that again to close it down even further, because it really doesn't take much of a join there to lock the 2 pieces together. However, with that said, I did come up with a different approach after I had much of this done. I think what I'm doing right now is I'm drawing the toilet bolt. So I just draw a circle on the center of that, and then I'll push it up, and I'll push it up, I think. Push it down. I don't know what I did here. The thing's screwing up on me. I like Sketch. It's not that I like it. I'm used to using it, but it does some crazy things sometimes. Like it'll go, right off the reservation there and do some stupid thing like it just did. And so, I was making the hole in that part. I wasn't making the bolt. That's what I was doing. Get with the program, John. You'll get with it. Okay, now I think I'm going to make the bolt. No, I'm screwing around with that again. I'm making this slot actually narrower, because this is where I remembered that the bolt, I have those. Okay, so here I'm drawing out the head of the bolt and push it up 1/16 of an inch, and then I think I use the arch tool to round the ends, getting all fancy with it. I try to avoid fancy stuff in my SketchUp thing. Like, I don't put threads on rods, like on screws or anything like that. Because, I mean, I don't even put screws in the thing. I just mark it with that circle with the X in it or the plus sign in it. Because that's all you need. I mean, you don't need an actual physical representation of a bolt or a screw with the threads. It's like this here. This is a bolt. You can see it's a bolt. And I mean, if I call it a bolt, it is a bolt. All right, so I'm putting that in place by, positioning it over the thing. And here's another thing with SketchUp. The thing flies all over the place. It's kind of frustrating. Then I get it down on the face, and that locates it fairly well, I think. So that's the bolt that locks the end that would fit on the other side of the panel in place. And here I've colored it brass color so that you'll know that it's a toilet bolt. And here I'm looking it over and I'm thinking of more stuff. And I think this is where I make the pin. Yeah, this is a 3/8 steel pin that the cam will pivot on. So I draw that in, and then I'll make it a component, and then I'll go back in and I'll make the center point on it so that I'll be able to line it up properly. And that's why I do that. Now I've colored it silver and everything's good. Here I think what I did was I'm laying out a spot here to show you how I drew the cam, because this model started with me that was already done. So what I'm doing is I'm drawing up, I think that's 7/8 of an inch diameter or radius. And now I've changed the circle to more segments so it's finer. And now I put two center lines on there. One is for the cam and one is going to be for this pivot point of the cam. And that's what makes a cam a cam. Otherwise it's just a circle. The pivot point has to be offset. So I've added the handle, I've come down to that, and now I'm erasing these segments that are still inside there. So what I'll do is I'll push that out, I think, to 1/2 inch. I think I went a bit too far there. Looks like it. But yeah, that's how you make a part like that. Here I'm moving it out for some reason. I'll erase that segment that's sticking out. Yeah, I think I'm just showing how it is, and now delete it. So that's how you make the cam. And here I'm coloring the parts because that makes them a little bit easier to see. I've colored the 1/2 inch plywood parts, that tan color, and now I'm coloring the thicker 3/4 inch stuff, maybe solid wood, with that darker color. All right, so there's going to be a wing nut and a washer on this. I'm not going to draw the wing nut because I made a model of that in another project, so I'll just copy it from there and bring it over here. But what I am doing is I'm making the washer. I'll push that all the way up there, and then I'll push it back down. Make it a 1/16 of an inch, although it's closer to actually 1/32 of an inch. Really doesn't matter for a washer, not for this anyway. Alrighty, at that point I was basically done with the design, except I did some more thinking about it, and I decided to make some changes to it. First of all, I wanted the thing to be 1/2 inch thick to give maximum depth of cut. But then I rethought that, and I said to myself that 3/4 inch, like 3/4 of an inch thick would be fine as well. I mean, you're not giving up that much of a depth of cut. So what I'm doing here now is I've taken the track off, I've moved it over, well, copied it over, and now I'm modifying it down to like a 1/2. So I've gotten rid of 1/2. I'm erasing all those parts now. And the idea is here, look, I screwed that up. The idea here is to actually build it in 2 pieces and put it together afterwards with a piece on top. And you'll see that coming up after I get done monkeying around here. So there's that. And I think what I'm going to do now is copy that over, or I'm going to make it a new component first. So the space in between on the original was 1/4 inch. I'm thinking 5/16 gives me a bit more leeway there for the bolt, since the bolt is 1/4 inch. And I'm looking at this, I'm studying it, I'm thinking about what I could be doing here. This is while I'm designing it. I'm measuring everything up, see if everything's copacetic to see the width, and yeah, that's a little bit too wide. I don't know why I changed this. If it's 3 1/16 inches wide, it really doesn't matter. So I'm moving in the sides there 1/32 of an inch to make it exactly 3 inches for some stupid reason. And now I'm adding the 1/4 inch piece of plywood to the top. And what the 1/4 inch plywood does, of course, it links both sides together. So I no longer need that slot join in the end or in the middle. The slot is continuous from front to back. So that thing can move all the way forward and back, no problem. So here I'm looking at this and I'm saying, what does the rub plate screw into? So I've got to move that part ahead a bit, and I'm going to draw a block to put in there. And this block would probably be solid wood, which would be better than the other thing, which would have been plywood. I mean, the end grain of solid wood is not great, but it's better than, I think, the end grain of plywood, because plywood is more likely to split. Not that that screw really needs to be held tight in there. It actually has to be left loose so that it can move. That rub plate needs to move. So I just went ahead and I colored that thing up there, and I think we're coming to the end of it now. So yeah. So that would be the changes. I just taking all that over and moving it where that was. Except I missed a part, move it over. And that's basically it. I'm going to probably make a few small changes. Like I'm looking at the rub plate there. I'm saying maybe it should be extended up, but no, I didn't do that. It doesn't have to be extended up. See, this is a better design, and this is the way I usually work it. And some days, like in the case of the drill press table, I'll sit there and I'll stare at that, and it will not come to me. Like the ideas won't come. And then other days, like this one here, when I have a particular problem in front of me, they'll come really fast. So, and what I did here, I didn't bring it up to completion, but I brought it up to something that I can actually work from. So what I'll do is I'll take some measurements from that. I'll go out to the workshop and I'll start making the parts, and I'll see how difficult different parts of it are. And part of that was the reason why I changed from that slot down the middle to make it in 2 pieces, because the 2 pieces can be cut on the table saw without any, there's not an operation there that you need to get out the router for, whereas you would need the router to cut the slot before. And as everyone should know, that cutting a slot with a router is not especially efficient, certainly not as efficient as a table saw. Now, what I could have done if I was, determined to use a solid piece of wood all the way through, was made the cut up to where it would stop, make the slot with the table saw, and then glue a block in the other end and maybe glue something in the middle to keep the 2 sides together. And I've done that before. I've done that several times. I think the last time I did it was on my beam compass, which is a build-up. Like, one thing that people do when they go to build something like this that has a slot, the first thing they immediately think about is that they have to cut out that slot. Whereas the more efficient way of actually getting a slot in something, especially something that's long and straight, is to build it up. Like cut strips and glue them together. And since we all know that wood glue is stronger than the wood itself, the glue joint is no compromise in strength when you do that.